Good. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this conversation today. It's a pleasure to be here with you. It's a pleasure to be engaging. And this month, as we are commemorating International Women's Month, we are keen on looking at the life science industry and also guiding it in terms of the key priorities, the key challenges that we're talking about. And today we are honored to have three great leaders in the pharma and the life science industry who have walked the path in different domains and different expertise. And we're hoping to learn from them, get insight, and most importantly, challenge ourselves on how do we ensure that the industry is responding to women's healthcare needs from an innovation and development, but also in access perspective. But most importantly, there's no way we can design solutions and deliver those solutions unless the beneficiaries are in terms of they are part of the development pathway. And in the life science industry, that opportunity comes from either innovation or employment pathways. And the question we're asking ourselves is, how do we make it possible for more women and more ladies, as many as possible, to get a pathway into the life science industry, to work in that ecosystem, but not only work as employees in doing the actual work from a day-to-day running, but actually shape the agenda, shape the priorities, and deliver the innovation that are desired to address the healthcare needs in our ecosystems. So that is the gist of our conversation and the core of what we're going to look into. But as we get into this, for me, the starting point is just having an introduction to let you know what we do as African Pharmaceutical Network. Then I'll get to the next part of it. So as African Pharmaceutical Network, we are a Pan-African convener and an advisory firm. And our core focus is in knowledge sharing, policy shaping, and innovation sharing partnerships to ensure there's reliable access to safe, effective, and quality medicines across the continent. We do this through our work in workforce development, business ecosystem support solutions, and market shaping interventions. And our work is grounded on the fact that we have a limited local manufacturing industry, but also with systemic challenges that are making it improbable and impractical, either for different global players to operate in the market, but for those who are here also to thrive and actually harness the capabilities within the market. We have a segregated ecosystem with different players working in their pockets. And our role as a convener is how do we bridge these gaps and actually get people to collaboratively drive solutions, unlock the barriers, and deliver intervention that people need where they need them. And that is why we do the work that we're doing. And that is the grounding of our work. We started in 2020 during the COVID period. And the foundational principle, as I've talked about, is to bring the different stakeholders together to orchestrate the ecosystem and get solutions that people desire, people hope for, where they need them. And most importantly, enable businesses and organizations working in that ecosystem to do this in a sustainable and pragmatic way that meets the local needs in a contextualized manner. Through that journey, we've walked different milestones and all that. And the key focus of our work has been in the Pharmacy Academy, where we offer training programs in professional courses. We have business advisory and ecosystem support from regulatory market access to the last mile pharmacovigilance oversight and patient engagement solutions in the continent. And we're glad to engage with those who would be interested and those who would be looking at that. And that is the scope of our services. I've talked about the workforce development, regulatory support services, business ecosystem, including market research work, and lastly, the policy shaping and policy environment shaping from our perspective. In the courses that we have three courses that are already currently running: regulatory affairs training, pharmacovigilance and patient safety, and pharmaceutical supply chain management. And actually, for those who would be interested, the next cohort of our intake is already on, which will be starting in May. And currently, the cohort that we are working with, they're almost getting through with their training. So those who are interested, feel free to reach out to us on email. And my colleague Juliet, who coordinates that aspect, will be more than glad to support you. These are some of the partners that we work with, IFPMA from the global industry level, and some of the companies that we've worked with as clients, and even USIU, University School of Pharmacy, is one of our partners in this particular context. And we're glad to have you, Prof. Shital, who actually is a key enabler to support to the work that we're doing. And we'll also be listening to you in the conversation that we're getting. So with that said, I'm going to introduce the speakers that we have for today. And that would be the end of it in terms of sharing my slides now. And I'll bring it to you, my panelists for the day. So number one, I'll start with Dr. Eva Mwai, who is the Regulatory Affairs Lead for East and West Africa at Helion. She's an experienced regulatory affairs leader with more than 13 years of experience across Africa's pharmaceutical and consumer health sector. She currently leads regulatory affairs for Helion, that is in East and West Africa, as already mentioned. Our work covers regulatory strategy, stakeholder engagement across the different markets. She has held senior regulatory leadership roles at GSK previously, where she drove product registration, policy engagement, regulatory harmonization, market access initiatives across the region. She also serves as an executive board member at the Kenya Association of Pharmaceutical Industry, where she engages with regulatory authorities, health authorities, and ministries to advance industry collaboration, but most importantly, to shape the self-care agenda within the region. She brings deep expertise in regulatory strategy, policy, and access to medicines across Africa. Our second panelist for the day will be Gracie Mushilwa, who is a global health leader with more than 25 years of experience in advancing access to healthcare across Africa and other emerging markets. She is a trained biochemist and a seasoned pharmaceutical executive. She has dedicated her career to strengthening health systems, expanding access to high quality medicines, and driving innovation that improves health outcomes for underserved populations. Through her career, she has led diverse teams across complex healthcare environments, working to accelerate equitable access to essential medicines and health innovations for millions of people. In recognition of her efforts, she has been the recipient of several awards both at home and globally. And beyond her corporate leadership, she is a passionate advocate for gender equity and inclusive leadership, championing this through the life science sector and beyond. She actively champions initiatives that advance women's economic empowerment, leadership opportunities, and meaningful participation in shaping healthcare innovation and access. She also serves in governance and advisory boards role that promote sustainable community-driven approaches to global health challenges. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry and an MBA in International Business Management, and she's currently pursuing a PhD in Healthcare Management, focusing on strengthening health systems and leadership in emerging markets. And our last speaker is Prof. Shital Maru. I would say most of us within the pharmaceutical industry, we've gone through our hands as our lecturer, as our examiner as well, and also now our partner. So she's a distinguished academic leader, pharmaceutical scientist, and registered pharmacist with more than 2 decades of experience in higher education, research, and health system strengthening. She's currently on secondment from the University of Nairobi, serving as the Dean School of Pharmacy, United States International University, Africa, USIU, Nairobi, where she's providing strategic leadership in academic programming, research, innovation, and institutional partnerships. Her expertise spans pharmaceutics, pharmaceutical quality systems, regulatory affairs, and health product supply chain management, with a strong focus on low and middle income country contexts. She is widely recognized for her work in innovative drug delivery systems, including pediatric formulation, and for advancing pharmaceutical quality assurance through frameworks such as Quality by Design, WHO GMP standards, and the global regulatory standards. She holds a PhD in pharmaceutics from the University of Nairobi, complemented by a Commonwealth Scholarship at the University of Bradford, UK, and an MBA from the University of Liverpool in the UK as well. She's a trusted policy advisor, contributing to national and regional pharmaceutical policy development, and serves on expert committees for regulatory bodies, including the Pharmacy Advisors Board of Kenya, Kenya Biovacs, Ministry of Health, Kenya University of Rwanda, East Africa Community, and many more. How work continues to shape pharmaceutical education, pharmaceutical industry, pharmaceutical research, and health system strengthening across Africa and across the world in terms of high knowledge being used in different spaces. So with that said, we have a renowned group of panelists that are going to share with us and going to share a conversation in terms of how things have happened in their own careers, that is sharing your personal journeys, most importantly, looking at how do we move from where we are and moving to the next level. And for me, when I look at the life science industry, I normally look at it in the context that in every single moment, in every single life, we need health products and technologies when we are unwell. And when we are seeking solutions, we need something that works for us. And it's more about how do we innovate and develop safe, effective, quality products, make them accessible to the patient that are using them. And in that understanding, you must understand the disease, you must understand the patient process, but most importantly, the ecosystem where you're doing this work. And I love the fact that the three of you have a component of health system strengthening work, whether career-wise, whether professionally, and even in academia angle. So by the virtue that you worked in different domains in the industry, each of these different areas, what would you consider to be the advantages of having representation of different genders, especially in this context, women in their different pharma segments? So I'll start with you, Eva.
Thank you, David, for that introduction. And congratulations on the work you're doing at APN. So proud of you. I've worked with you before. So I am a champion of APN. And I think in relation to the questions that you've asked, and please tell me if I'm audible enough or I need to project my voice some more.
We can hear you perfectly well.
Perfect. So I feel like in regulatory affairs and in the regulatory space where I work a lot, women need to be represented because regulatory falls under R&D, which is the research and development departments in most companies. And you find that this is where we analyze safety, we analyze the trials, we do the clinical trials and so forth, and we design how a product is going to affect a patient. And I believe that a woman in that position can be able to say, have you considered XYZ? Have you considered the side effects in an African woman? Have you considered pregnancy? Have you considered lactation? Have you considered? So there are many things that I feel women just inherently you always ask about whenever a product is undergoing a clinical trial or a safety trial or anything as it pertains coming up with a product. I also feel that women regulators, because I also deal with regulators, right, champion inclusive policy reforms. And you'll find it without risk of looking biased, you'll find it better that women understand other women. And even in the undertone, the way you present your problem, if you're going to see a woman regulator, be like, okay, this is how I can help you, and this and this and this. We have an inherent habit or character of just helping out. And I feel that when women regulators are there, things move. I've seen this even when appointments of head DGs or head of health authorities around Africa. When it's a woman, you know that it will move. So it's that's my view, that these are the advantages that women bring to the regulatory space.
Thank you so much for that, Eva.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And actually, there's something that I didn't mention. I've worked with all of you in different phases. You, Eva, from Capi days and all that. Tracy was my boss within Novartis, a very an amazing boss for that matter, and Prof. Shital as my supervisor in my undergraduate education, but also now as a partner to African Pharmaceutical Network. So I'll hand it over to you, Tracy.
Thank you so much, David. And I know we are still in March, so we can still celebrate International Women's Day. So to all of us on the call, especially the men also who are allies in this whole journey that we are in, we work as a team. I'm a mother of boys, so I try to make sure then as I empower the woman, the boy child is also empowered, because I don't want my boys to reach a point when they're saying now, how do I approach this girl to tell her that I love her, when actually the girl is quite empowered. So we have to have that allyship across them. So going back to your question, when I look at inclusion of women or gender in the industry, it's not a fairness question. It's just not fairness. From my experience, what I've seen, it improves decisions that are made. Some problems are prioritized more than others because that diversity helps bring different perspectives towards challenges and solutions, and ultimately then definitely it's going to affect the quality of outcomes that come from the decisions that are made when you have a gender diversity kind of environment. I've been in the pharmaceutical industry going for 25 years, as we've mentioned, and most of it has been commercial. But having said that, I've worked with regulatory, I've worked with medical, I've worked with all that because it was the nature of my job. And one of the things that I saw really happening very well was that when you have a gender diversity from a team performance perspective, it helps in problem solving, decision making, and especially in the kind of markets that we have, which are quite competitive in Africa, it needs that kind of diversity. And I think studies have shown, I read somewhere where homogeneous kind of teams in terms of problem solving, it's not as good as a team which is quite diverse. Another aspect that I can also bring in is from a commercial perspective, being able to understand the different patient populations. So yes, the teams to be diverse, but also from a patient perspective, also having those diverse teams also helps, because then it also helps make healthcare decisions which are well informed across all the genders. And even in terms of now, when you have to design some campaigns, because sometimes I would say when we'd have to design some campaigns in some of the markets, the way a man would think and the way women would think, the approach they would take would be different. So where you have that diversity in thinking, it really helps. It really helps. And I can share an example in my team. When I took over the team in one of the companies I was managing, actually, the gender ratio was roughly 35% below, actually between, I think it was 33% female and the rest were male. So I had to work around to make sure then I grew team to going towards 50, because I felt like having both genders and both voices and giving an opportunity to both of them to talk, to voice their views, helped in the way we were running as a team, helped in the way we were managing the organization, it helped in the way we were making decisions, it helped in the way we were coming up with promotion programs, it helped in the way development was being structured, it helped in the way we were conducting interviews, that it was not a one-way thinking, but it was a diverse way of thinking. So it's not, as I said at the beginning, it's not so much of a fair question, it's a strategic and it's important decision that needs to be made in any company, in any environment where both genders are required. And I think, David, also you're aware from a medical perspective, at one point in Novartis, the last place I was working, where we were talking of diversity and inclusion, even in clinical trials. And that was not only from a gender perspective, it was not only from a race perspective, it was also from a gender perspective. So all those components, when you look at it, they become quite critical in anything if you want to survive and to actually succeed in any environment you're in. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Tracy. I'll hand it over to you, Prof. Shital, especially when you look at the dynamic in the academic space. Yes.
Thank you, David. I've been in academia and I feel like a grandmother now, Eva. I think you can agree with me. I've been over 20 years, 25 years in academia. I'm into academia, science, and research. And basically what we do in academia is we are building capacity through training. Ideally, we are developing workforce for the life sciences, for the health sciences, for the pharmaceutical industry as well. As much as my school right now with USIU Africa, we have 54% of our students who are female students. So there is this strong female enrollment in the universities that I have seen, taught, and currently. But then when it comes to leadership, we have very low enrollment, unfortunately. I'll tell you, there are 8 schools of pharmacy in Kenya for right now, 8 universities, out of which I am the only female dean in leadership as the dean. So we need to break those barriers. There are challenges as a woman. Number one, when we've been recruited, ideally that recruitment prerequisite and even promotion criteria that we have around is a very male-dominated prerequisite. I am a woman, I have been given, I give life. I am also a mother of boys. So I'm not undermining the boy child, but it's kind of historic where we have these criteria for recruitment and for promotion in academia or even in the pharmaceutical industry, which is very patriarchal, which is very male dominated. So I will give you one example. When I was doing my PhD, I had one of my colleagues who was expectant. And she was only given 3 months of of maternity leave, which is quite unfair. And she had to leave her research in between for 3 months and then come back to the lab and work and do all that. That is, but she has created a life. All right. Nobody sees that. So they only see that she was not there and she needed to have caught up. The same thing when I was a young lady, I was working in KNH. I would finish my ward rounds and catch up, go breastfeed, come back. It was a marathon. Nobody actually checks that. Even now, there's that work-life balance is a challenge on its own. I'm sure Racy and Eva would agree with me and the others in attending. So we need to do something about it. We need to have mentorship. Some of us as women, we do not even talk to each other. We are so secretive. We do not want to tell the other one that, yeah, I'm suffering, So sometimes you even fought with your husband in the morning and you come and you have an attitude which is not explainable. And our hormones, I'm in my 50 plus. Sometimes our hormones don't even help. Nobody understands it. I'm supposed to report to my male boss. As in USIU, I'm also the only female who is the dean out of 5 schools. So sometimes when I'm sweating in the middle of a meeting, nobody understands. I'm sure you understand what I'm talking about. So there's very limited mentorship, sponsorship as well. We need people to talk in closed door meetings. How many of our PSCs are even female? Ministry of Health, you look at PPB, all of them are male. But we need male, our sons, our husbands, our brothers, to be talking about women in closed doors and give that sponsorship. In fact, I'll tell you, I'm earning a salary which my former dean, who was a male, earned 6 years ago, just because I'm a female. Yes, times have changed and I have better qualifications. I have better experience in administration than any other dean around or the former dean. Yet we are trying to persevere and say, it's okay, So that attitude needs to change. It only leads to demotivation, slower career progression, and that only means that my family is losing out on the economic productivity. Even the innovation potential is lost. I'm so demotivated. As a young woman, okay, I had the energy, but now.
Thank you so much for that. And I think these are some of the key things, and I like the fact that you're bringing some of the challenges, because actually that is the next question I was going to pose to you. We see the potential and the possibilities that having women in these spaces help us actually, especially in the life science industry, but also by the virtue that you've walked that journey. What are some of the critical barriers? Prof. Shital has mentioned a couple of them, and then at least do share some of those that you're observing on your end. I'll start with you, Racy. You're on mute.
Sorry, we've never gotten out of this up to now. Anyway, so yeah, she's mentioned some of the. I know she's mentioned about the gap, the salary gap perspective, and I think what I would say it's also up to us as leaders on this call to be very intentional in terms of what we push in the spaces that we are at. My philosophy has always been that I might not gain at that point in time. I know the team was give to gain, but I might not gain at that point in time, but somehow it's paid forward. So just pushing to make sure from an equality, let me say equity perspective, a pay equity is where it needs to be. That for me is very critical. But also going back to also what your question was, David, what I've seen, some of the barriers, some of them are self-inflicted barriers, for lack of a better word. Others are barriers that come from the culture, and others are barriers that come from the policies or the way the people behave. Yeah. So if I talk about self-inflicted barriers, I can say, for instance, when it comes to some of the roles within the different markets, I'll talk about commercial roles. You find that very few women get into commercial roles, especially the higher the roles come up. You find that very few people raise their hands actually to be given those promotions or to raise their hands to be part of that promotion. And I guess it's the way we look at ourselves as women. We want to have 100% everything on the job description, whereas men or a very alpha female, for lack of a better word, will decide I'm 75%, I can still raise my hand and I'll be able to do what I need to do. I remember in one of the places that I worked, there was an opportunity that was to come up in one of the markets from a stretch assignment perspective out of Africa. And there was this female who was extremely, extremely competent. I really used to admire what she was doing. And the first time when I said, why can't you go for this? The first thing she said, now, whom will I leave the children with? What will my husband think? He'll think I want to be better than him. I want to earn more than him. What would my mother-in-law think? Those are the things that she was talking about. And sometimes I think these things is all about conversation with your partner. And for me, what I always say, if my partner is okay with it, if my husband is okay with me proceeding and doing what I need to do, honestly, I don't care what everybody else says at the end of the day, because you're the one who knows where the shoe hurts. You're the one who knows that if things are not working well where you have a partner, how will you sort that out? And especially in cases where you're living together, then becomes a different thing altogether. So conversations are very critical. And once that conversation is done, if you're competent and you believe in yourself, go for it. When we talk about giving to gain, is how can we make sure we empower the women? We make sure the woman is able to stand on themselves so that then they can pay forward, where then they have to also do what? Provide mentorship, grow other people, let other people climb on their shoulders. For me, that's extremely critical. Another thing probably I can also mention is from a socioeconomic inequality perspective, I think Prof Shital talked about it, where especially in the low and middle income settings, women have less financial autonomy. And this then also impacts their ability to access treatments. And we've seen in most cases that a mother would rather get sick and not treat themselves, but to treat their child, for instance, or because they think we are selfless. Women can be extremely selfless, but sometimes because we lack enough to do for everybody, so we rather sacrifice ourselves than do for others. It's a good thing, but sometimes I look at it not at the expense of your health, because you need to be alive to be able to add to the economic growth of wherever it is you are, and even for your children to see you as you are. And from a gender disparity, from a disease burden perspective, in a marketing space, you'll find that in most cases, you find there are some diseases which are more prevalent when it comes to women compared to men, etc., etc. And that burden of the disease burden differences also impact in a way the way sometimes pricing is done, reimbursement is done on some of the things, where in some markets people think we're rather reimbursing this thing for prostate cancer, giving an example, than doing it for this because men, we need them to be able to do 1, 2, 3 things. Some of the markets, that is what the behavior that they have. So it's a matter of looking at it with all these barriers. What solutions can we come up with to make sure then everything that we have is actually designed that it should benefit every person, irrespective of the gender they're in? And I guess it starts with us. It starts with us who are the call to make sure that some of those discussions, we have them. They might not benefit us at this point, but as I say, it always pays forward. You never know, it's your children who will benefit. Or as you grow up in your career still, as much as Shital says she's 50 plus, I've realized in this world you can work until even 80. It doesn't matter. You can work until 90. It just depends on the mindset that you have, and you still become productive. She's extremely productive, even as she's saying that, and she's not old. And neither am I old. I'm also 50 plus. Yeah.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you so much. Eva, any barrier that you look at and you see in your ecosystem, and actually add a follow-up question to this. When I look at my previous experience within the industry and even continuously, I would see more women in the more technical and I would say the back office activity operations. What are some of the key barriers and actually what are the key dynamics and trends that drive these more?
Oh, all right. I'm not going to say my age.
We are still
The-
Gen Z together, don't worry.
But I really love what Prof and Racy have said because they have summarized a lot of what most of us go through while in the ladder or, at the top. So when you look at regulatory, I feel, and I stand to be corrected, that there's actually more women in regulatory than men in the office. And one day, I think we were sitting in a meeting and were like regulatory, woman. And I don't know if it's my company, but we find it more that it's because of, I don't know. I don't know if we are the ones who are the science, it's the STEM people, but when it comes to the challenges we face and the barriers, they're the same. We are underrepresented. We are mainly, in fact, if not called a supportive function.
Support function.
And I do not like that word because I feel that we are the business. Without regulatory, you are not selling anything. You are not marketing anything. You are not. So I keep encouraging my fellow regulatory affairs people that, you know what? You're not support. Go in and you're a co-pillar of the business. Make sure you take your seat at the table and you speak. Because if you don't speak, all they are saying there is nothing if they cannot bring that product into the market, right? If they are going to take 2 years to bring the product into the market, if it's going to be blocked anyway. So I feel that the barriers about having sponsors, about being in leadership, about just someone listening to your voice is there, and we experience it the way Racy and Prof have mentioned. But more so, if I look inward in R&D, as I mentioned earlier, I feel that uh, a lot of the processes with regards to clinical trials, with regards to designing of a product, not a lot of it considers hormonal changes, not all of it considers all the changes that we undergo as women. I also feel that I think it's Racy that mentioned the accessibility to finance. And of course, it comes up to you not earning a lot. So most of the people who take their children, or as even it's us, actually I take my husband to hospital, like I'm like, let's go now, we have to go, and it's the women. So if they don't have the information, if they are not health literate, if they don't know they are supposed to take this child to hospital, if they don't know, then the whole community doesn't know. And I believe that health literacy, especially to women, is very important because many of us take a medicine also because our mother gave us, right? Or let's buy this because mommy said this. Let's buy this because. So I feel that if R&D, right, and in the companies that we work also focus a lot on women and services around women, campaigns around women, and doing their clinical trials around women health, it will really, really benefit a lot of us. And I think the benefits are we can't even explain how much. Yeah. So beyond the work-life balance, beyond the mentorship, beyond the leadership, this for me is very important for me to mention, because I feel that if a woman cannot afford the medicine, then the family cannot afford the medicine. If a woman doesn't know anything, yes. So these barriers, I work every time in my work, I work towards this. I'm like, are we doing campaigns on XYZ? Are we involved women? Are the nurses mostly women? You see, so women are a big deal for R&D companies, and especially in the R&D space. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. And I think this is a critical piece that you're bringing in. When you look at clinical trial design and all that in terms of community engagement, how many women do we engage in those trials? And you look at it from a scientific principle, I would say, okay, because they are in the, I would say, kind of gestational period, whatever it is, we cannot get them into trials. So ultimately, then we try as much as possible to avoid women in studies, I would say the childbearing age, gestational age, and all that. And as you are avoiding them, you are doing studies in other people and not even involving them from an educational perspective. Yet they are the funnel to the access to the clinical trials, but also the access to the product in the last mile when it is available in the market, because they'll decide who gets treated and who doesn't get treated. So that level of community engagement, clinical studies, I think that is a critical piece that rarely do we talk about, and it needs to happen as much as we need to. And picking up from that, I would come back to you, Prof. Shital. Ultimately, we've already seen and we've established the need for having more women in the life science industry, but also giving them opportunities to grow in careers across the spectrum to be able to make that happen. And we know the challenges that are there. From an academic angle, you've already talked about 54% of your students are ladies. How do we give them the foundation and the necessary support system to actually transition into the market? What are some of the initiatives that you think would really help, and any that you know that are working at the moment?
So we formed kind of a mentorship program within the school, and the university overall is taking it quite positively. We are looking at developing these young women into women leaders, whichever field, whether academia or research or the pharma industry or any other. And it's going on well. We have quite a number of women faculty who have taken up those mentorship programs, and female students who are, but we're also trying to make the male student an enabler, because I mean, the two are related somehow. And once that is stabilized, the male colleague or the male peer actually understands how necessary women are in pharmacy or health sciences or pharmaceutical industry, then it would lead to better societal norms, better work norms. Even it will lead to change in policy and advocacy there. So we try to work from a grassroots level, and then move towards women in leadership, where we would actually now start, if a man understands women in professions, that would lead to sponsorship. So we are encouraging even policymakers, recruiters, the pharma industry. In fact, when they advertise for vacancies, you would say we would want the position for women is encouraged. Those kind of statements that would encourage women to apply. Yeah.
No, thank you. Thank you so much for that. And I think it is more of the intention of mentorship and tunneling, so that then they know the possibilities that are coming out there. And on the other hand, looking at how do we get the men also to appreciate the value of women and actually open the possibilities and the pathways. And looking at that, I'll come back to you, Racy. And this is a biased question because I worked with you in Novartis. And one of the key things that I noted when I joined Novartis, in your leadership team, you had 50% women. Actually, I would say more than 50% because there were 3 women and 2 men in that team from an SSL leadership perspective. How did you make it to make that a priority for you? And actually, what are the key steps that in our different leadership capabilities we can put in place to ensure that we have that kind of diversity, but also importantly, get it to deliver results in terms of how you did it as a leader?
Thank you for that. So when I took over the role, and that was the East Africa head role, then grew up the roles to the Africa cluster SSA. At that point in time, I think, as I said, it was roughly 33%. The leadership team was roughly at 33%, but I made it very intentional because I made it intentional because I knew the value of being able to get the different perspectives that came from having gender diversity. But it was not only gender diversity I was targeting, it was also age. I tried my best to make sure that I was bringing millennials to have a totally different mindset altogether, because at that point in time, I think it was mostly Generation X, if I'm not mistaken. So I brought in a bit more millennials to wake us up, so that then we were thinking a different way altogether. So those were the two things I was also actually targeting. But what was most visible, definitely, it was the female. And how did I go about that? First and foremost, working very closely with the P&O or the HR team, that when you're having the interviews, on the interview panel, it has to be diverse to start with. That's one thing. The interview panel has to be diverse. Also, and diversity was gender, it was tribe, it was country specific, because now it was an Africa role. So I needed to see that it's coming from across the different clusters. From an age perspective, that's also what I was looking at. Could I get different demographics within the LT team? And that was something I was monitoring very closely with the P&O team to make sure that we are driving that. But the team also knew I was working on that. And even as I say that, it was all based on merit, not entitlement. And that's one thing I always say, even for the female, when you're talking about gender diversity, let it not be that it's affirmative action or it's entitlement. I look at it that I have to be able to stand on the same podium and argue the same way the opposite gender will argue, because I'm coming on it at a level playing field, as much as that's not always the case. But that's how I approach things. Level playing field, what can you offer compared to this person, compared to this talent? And that, for me, that's what I was also working on. But also looking at that, one of the things I always used to encourage was that we have to support each other from a home perspective. Like, I'll give an example that if a male colleague would come and tell me that, Tracy, I need some time off to go and take my kid to the clinic, they didn't have even to fill the leave form. I'll just tell them, go. Just go right now, because traditionally that is not to be a woman's job. So women are the ones who will go take the kids to the clinic, do this, take them for sports day, go remove them. It's closing day. They're the ones who are going for parents' meeting. Men who showed who showed the intention to actually support their women at home where that was concerned, I would also support them in that way to make sure that things were working as expected. In some of the markets under the clusters, the diversity was different, where the gender, there were more female than men. And so we had to work the other way around. Please make sure so that let's make sure this many female, we get more men coming in to avoid the emotions that came in through that whole thing of having only female, you see. So it would go always. And because also as we do that, Africa being a cultural and social kind of environment, we come in where we say, when you remember I talked about a man coming to ask me to go for sports day, whatever it is. For me, there I've always looked at life. I don't think there's anything we can call work-life balance. For me, where I stand, that is not there. What I do is I integrate different things into my life. So I always prefer to call it work-life integration. And where I need to buy, I'll buy what I need to buy. The only thing I cannot buy is being a wife to my husband and a mother to my children. That's something that I find that is my primary calling. Being a Christian, that's my primary calling, to make sure that I'm the best wife I can be to my husband and the best mother I can be to my children. That one I cannot buy it, but anything else I can buy. If it means placing an order Carrefour to come and do it, I'll do that wherever I am in the world. If it means bringing someone to help me cook, I'll do that. So what you can buy, to make sure then you're integrating what you need to integrate to to help your life come to a certain balance. But sometimes you find the scale can come this way, it can go this way, but you need to integrate what you need to integrate. So making sure you're intentional when you're doing recruitment, that is very critical. Making sure when you're doing succession planning, make sure from a succession planning perspective, ready now, ready in 2 years, ready in 5 years, for future pipeline, etc. Make sure you're including women in the talking talent discussions. Organization culture, make sure those topics are also discussed. What role do women play? What role do male play? What role do millennials play? What role does Gen Z play? How do you make sure integrating that to ensure the culture within the organization is where it needs to be? By the time I was leaving Novartis, roughly 65% of the team was millennials and below. The rest of us were. So how do you make sure you have policies? The culture is well designed to fit that kind of environment. It means you have to be intentional on the leadership you also put up there, so that then they're talking the voice of the people on the ground. So it's all about intention, David.
Thank you so much for that. I think the intentionality aspect comes in clearly, and it's beyond the gender aspect. You need to look at the different variables as well. And I like the fact you brought in the aspect in terms of the age and all that, because in the different generations, we all have different socialization, different perspectives, and ultimately our ways of working are also different. And that is representative of the market that we are serving. So ultimately, if you don't understand the market, there's no way you're ever going to serve them and actually deliver the solution that is needed there. And I like that piece. And guided by that, actually, there's somebody who has posted a comment here that I'm going into. Prof, from my observation, currently at a university, enrollment statistics show significantly more female than male, and that is accurate because you already talked about it, 54%. Scholarships and mentorship programs are heavily targeted toward empowering women, rightfully so, but there are few initiatives focused on struggling young men. Some boys from disadvantaged backgrounds drop out early to pursue informal work, feeling left behind academically. Critical reflection here is, have empowerment efforts for women unintentionally left a gap in support for men? Who is supporting boys who are academically at risk? And those are questions, and I would love to hear your perspective, especially as mothers of boys. Yeah. Any
Good.
comment from you?
Yes, in fact, we've observed men, by their nature, the DNA, our societal pressures, it has been a society and culture where men never spoke. David, do you speak to your father or your father-in-law?
We do talk a little bit with my dad, yes.
But most,
My
I'm
mom
sure
more.
the older men, my age group, they were so scared to talk to their fathers. So they would talk to their mothers by nature. What we are empowering women. We are actually then on the opposite end, trying to, our boy child is becoming, what do I put it, as demotivated. You see, we're not giving that focal point to our boy child. So emotionally, they are weaker, and by the way, it is medical evidence that men emotionally are weaker than women. By nature of our DNA, women are multitaskers. You ask Gracie, she's talked about she can do 100 things within that 8 to 5 job, including Eva. But you ask David, how many multitasking things have you done? By evidence, it would not be possible. So what we're trying to do with this is a male enabler. We are not leaving them out. Our theme is he for she and she for he. That's our theme. We are using that male enabler. We are actually having forums where these pharmacy female students who are quite aggressive, even in the examination, female performance is better than the male. So we are telling them, have study groups, have forums where you integrate, you talk to each other in a professional level, and you support each other. Even the boy child, don't shy away, from the female. You need to talk to each other. You need to actually have forums and events. We do purposefully create events where there is that exchange. And we're calling it he for she and she for he as well. And it's doing quite good. We are trying to have that program. We're looking at how the industry which creates this opportunity, because whatever the case is, this boy child will think, when I come out there, of course me, I'm going to get the job, which is not true. So we are also trying to tell the industry, as much as if you're taking 4 male students of mine, please take 2 more female students as well. So there are those balances we are trying to do. As much as we are recruiting as well, we get more applications from female faculty, potential female faculty when we are recruiting, which is a good thing, and we do give opportunities. But we also have to have a balance. So if we recruit one faculty, a female faculty, we would want to recruit one male faculty, and that is the policy we are going to be using, he for she and she for he. And it's doing quite well. We're looking at certain job categories within the industry, the non-traditional way, like pharmacovigilance, regulatory affairs, and all that. We are encouraging women as much. But even in the lab, the science, like pharmaceutics or the production area, we want to train females to be there. So these are some of the issues, that potential issues for the future, that we are addressing from the academia point of view. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And I think one of the key things that we noted initially was that we have different roles within the industry as well, from life science ecosystem, but not as many people know what those possibilities are. Actually, that is the foundation of us having the different training programs. Myself, when I got into RA, I didn't know what RA entailed. I was lucky that I had the right exposure and the right networks, the likes of Eva, who were giving me some insights from a CAPI standpoint, and that opened new possibilities for me in my career. But then how many other young people? I think that intentionality would need to be there. And Resi or Eva, anything that when you reflect on this conversation, on how do we get the men actually also to get into the conversation in terms of empowering the boy child? Are there any things that you want to share on that? I'll start with you, Eva.
Thank you. I think it's my generation of women that were pumped up with the girl power, without telling my age. We were pumped up with the girl power from high school all the way. I think the narrative in the back, and I talk about this with my friends, the narrative was, make sure you pass with A, you go to university, you pass, you get a master's, you get a PhD, and you work very hard. And we were also pumped with that, a lot of a lot of empowerment, right? And we were given these opportunities, and that's why I feel that even in STEM there's also a lot of women, just because of that there were more scholarships. You could apply as long as you just put there female in the early 2000s, and you just go through. But I feel that right now, especially because I'm a pharmacist and I understand how hard it has been for male pharmacists, just balancing their work and family. It has been quite a difficult journey for us in the past 1 year as pharmacists. We've seen a lot happen. Now, I feel that we need to give the male child the voice that I was given a couple of years ago, yeah, or 15 or 20 years ago. I feel we need to motivate them more. So I feel that even if you're a woman sponsor, for every woman you're sponsoring in a meeting, I also talk about the male because sometimes it can overpower, right? And I've been in rooms where, it can be woman, 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 right? So because of the generation I come from, right? I'm a millennial. So we were really pumped up with this girl, 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 girl. But I feel that when we are sponsoring, when we are mentoring, right? We also mentor young pharmacists. I also mentor young pharmacists, male pharmacists, and any other male that wants to be mentored and coached and sponsored because they are just as important. Their voice is just as important. So it's a matter, I don't think we should even reinvent the wheel. Whatever worked for us is going to work for them. We just do it. There's no special program. There's nothing special. And these days, inclusivity is the word. It's what do you say? It's that word, right? So I feel that even right now, it's just a matter of giving them equal chance. And as Racy said, when we go in for an interview, if the panelists are inclusive, then that means you're going to pick someone who has the right potential for the job. So it's also a matter of mentoring. I feel that mentoring is very, very important because you skip the mistakes someone made, you know. And I encourage men, please mentor a fellow, another man, because most of the time when I feel when I mentor young men, they say, oh, don't really understand. And sometimes I question, I'm like, maybe I don't really understand. He has a wife, me, I have a husband, so it's different. It's a little bit different. But I feel we don't need to reinvent the wheel. If there were scholarships, sponsorships, if there were mentorships, programs for women, we just copy paste for men. And I feel that it will work. It will work. More so because it's urgent. Yeah, more so because it's urgent. So that's my feel on that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I think it's adopting the key things that work for women and making it available for men. And I think to an extent, one thing that I would add to that is the fact that as men, I think we need to be open to mentorship more. I look at it for the work that we do and the work that I've done from 2017 with Reculture, now African Pharmaceutical Network, and in both phases. When we used, that was in 2017, 2018, 2020, we had the man talk and ladies talk sessions. We had more ladies joining the ladies talk conversations than men who were coming into the mentorship forums. And when they came, the question was always clear. How do I get the job I'm looking for? So there's no learning, but there's an outcome that is intended. And that becomes our undoing as men because we want to jump the process. We want the outcome of that process. And that is some of the key things that I would be keen on having conversation. But I'll hand it over to you, Racy.
Sorry, before Racy comes in,
Yes.
I'm very sorry, Racy. There's something that David said, and I want to also contribute. I feel like for men, we have to go to where they are. So I can go to a basketball game. I don't have a problem. Women, we did go to where women are. So when I mean like we can copy paste, we can truly copy paste. If men like uh to come together in, I don't know, talk of Anyama, something, then we should be there. Because you have to meet someone where they're most comfortable. Because when they're coming to an official forum, they're coming to us for a job. Unlike women, we can come to an official forum and just want to be inspired. There's a difference. Sorry, Tracy.
That's
Thanks.
good. Thank you.
no,
Thank you for that.
Yeah, extremely
Over to you,
valid
Resi.
points. Yeah, extremely valid points. Just to add on that, I believe role modeling is what also we lack in most cases. So having men whom people can role model, and unfortunately, if you look at the environment that we have right now, especially the politicians who a lot of these kids also look up to, you see the way they behave, the way they talk to each other, the way they abuse each other, the way it's just not good role models. But also just going back to our families, even ourselves here, just reflecting. For us who are fathers, how many times for us here who are fathers, how many times you stay with your kid, with your boy child, to just make sure you're mentoring them towards what good looks like. In most cases, they're always with their mothers. And unfortunately, the environment we are in right now, it's not the environment we grew up where we were raised by a community. So you still see your uncle would still tune out, pull your ears if they saw you doing something wrong. Right now, it's only your mother, your father who can do it. So long time we had so many role models around us who would keep us accountable, who would not mess when they're around. But right now, everybody, it's your parents. So if your father is not there, then in most cases, you're not likely to know what a real good model looks like. And you're likely to just think it's what mommy is doing. That is what a man should be doing. So role modeling for me is very critical at this point in time, and it's extremely foundational. Before even you go out, it needs to start from the home.
Thank you so much for that, Tracy. I think it really makes a lot of sense. Who are the men we are seeing in our society? Who can we look up to and actually learn from in the different aspects that we're looking at? So that's a challenge to us. And then another question here, because of culture of society, patriarchal norms often lead to situations where women's voices are silenced or disregarded, particularly in meetings and decision-making roles, with those who speak up sometimes labeled as either aggressive or unfeminine. How do we as women deal with men or situations and circumstances that tend to bring us down and disregard our opinions or suggestions in the process of becoming leaders? Anybody willing to take that up?
Yes, I can talk a bit about that because I think that's something I've definitely experienced many times. Because where I would go with when I'm visiting the different countries, you go to a meeting and everybody will always think that the person who is the boss is the man, not the woman. So the people would always talk to my male colleagues because they're addressing them as racy. Some of them, since they don't know whether race is a boy or a girl, they even say Mr. Racy, The real is actually Race is a woman, and she's the one standing next here who is wearing a dress and looking very female. Yeah, so that happens. And also in rooms where you are the only female and people. I remember at one point in my leadership, when still in my leadership journey, at one point we went for a meeting, and this meeting majority around 70-80% of them were male, and the 30% were female, including the trainer. So that 30% was the trainer who was coming to train us. And unashamedly, someone just said, "Resi, can you serve us tea? Because you are the female here." So I did serve tea. I did serve it, but at the end of the day, I told them I'm not serving it because I'm a woman. Anyone who knows me knows I can be quite outspoken, respectfully. I'm not serving because, and I say it with a laugh and a smile, I'm not serving because I'm a woman. I'm serving because I want to serve you, all of you here. So what I've learned from my career is also speaking up, and that takes courage and takes you also being very comfortable in your skin to speak up, knowing that it doesn't matter whether I lose my job or not, but I've spoken up for people for myself, and by virtue of that, for other people. I've been in rooms where I'm the only female. I've been in rooms where I'm the only Black. I'm the only traditional African. And in some of those cases, some of those biases are unconscious. So people also need to be educated that no, saying this kind of things in front of 1, 2, 3 things is not the right thing. So I think, so standing up for me, having the courage to stand up has really worked for me, but it's taken time. So I'll not pretend it's something that I just like this I became courageous to start speaking up. No, it's taken time for me to reach where I am to say, no, I'm not going to take this nonsense. And from there, I make a decision to see then how do I move forward to make sure I'm at peace. And I always believe that if anything is disturbing your peace, then it's too expensive. It's very expensive. You'd rather let it go. Yeah. But that takes time. It's not something that you need to be at peace. You need to be okay within yourself. You need to be at that point where you say, it's me, it's Racy, and it's Racy. My peace is more important than anything else. I'll speak what I need to speak respectfully. Please always speak respectfully, because at the end, the fundamental thing, they're human beings. So talk to them as human beings. They could be having a title higher than yours, but they're human beings and they deserve to be treated with respect.
Thank you so much for that. I think, Eva, you want to say something?
Yes, I think the one thing that, so my journey is that I think it's good, but also that I was competent. I became head of department. I think it's even, let's say, 10 years ago, right? 10 years ago now. And I was quite young. Now, I suffered mansplaining. Do you know what mansplaining is, David?
Yes.
So I said something, and then another man took up my and said what she means. Ooh, ooh. And David, you know me. I can hold my hand like this until I can hold them no more. And I think it took some coaching, some one-on-ones with people uh, of the meeting, just to explain to them that, look, I'm the SME here and you don't need to explain for anything. If someone has any clarification, they can direct it to Eva. Right? And if I don't have the answer, it is fine. I'm going to get back to you. Right? And mansplaining is one thing that I have suffered. Even when you go to talk to regulators and you find it's a room full of the officers, head of regulatory, head of the HA, the DG or the CEO, and then you find this, all of them. And then they say, yes. And then the one thing that always follows after young lady, it is, I think, what she means. And I've suffered mansplaining. I think more than anyone in this room. And just because I was a leader at a very young age. And I feel that more coaching, mentoring helped me be able to speak up. Over time, I've been able to say my point with, with surety and be like, I've checked, I've understood this, the problem, and this is the solution. And if there's any question, even if there's mansplaining, I actually explain over the other man now who helped me explain. Let me explain for you now. So it's something that's there, and many women do have it because their fathers did it for them in a loving way. And it took me also some therapy, like it's because I have brothers only, and it's because so it happens. But mansplaining is one thing that I know women suffer from, and we need to mentor them and coach them to speak up more. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And I would say it cuts across because there are certain aspects that you think you know something, but the person, by the virtue of the socialization, we look out for you, we want to care about you, and therefore we feel explaining it to give that person understanding is actually supporting you. But in the reality is it's actually working against you because then it shows you don't know what you're doing. And I would say from an ageism perspective, I've seen the same as well. People assume, David, you're young, you don't know. So therefore, they're explaining the work for you. And you're like, I did the whole thing. So
I know.
and then you're like, but by virtue of age, I normally just let it pass. It's not like I'm losing anything either way, but life moves on. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So thank you so much for that. And maybe as a follow-up question that I would want to bring here is the fact that you guys are all in different, you've accomplished a lot of stuff in your professional careers, in your personal lives and everything. There's somebody in this meeting of the 72, 75 that we've been having who are here who is asking, how do I make it to that level? Are there any particular insights and lessons that you can point us to, especially on how they can carve their paths to get to be accomplished in their own careers and personal lives? I'll start with you, Shital.
Yeah, I think build yourself. So you need to build, number one, knowledge-wise, socially, economically as well, financially. And it goes hand in hand. We must adapt gender equity. As Eva is saying, I also have gone through men planning. There's somebody, when I was a young lecturer at UN, and somebody said, oh, she must have gotten a job because she is looking good. Now, what does it mean? I got the job because of my credentials, through my training, and so those kind of attitudes we must avoid. Let's have gender equity um, policies around as well. We have a lot of comments. We have sexual harassment both ways. In fact, now gender is not only two genders, we have more genders, or what we call as sexes. So we are evolving as globally, not only as a nation. So at USIU, because we are international, we have policies in place, gender-based violence, policies that help control some of these things that we're talking about, including societal issues. So train yourselves, elevate yourselves. Within that elevation, plan. What is your vision? Plan well. Yeah, being a woman is not a disadvantage. It is actually an advantage. And being a male is not a disadvantage. We need to have both the genders working equally and support each other. As I said, I come from a family of 3 girls, but I have male child, boys all across. So, and I have my students who are and we've been working well. I've got colleagues. As long as you have a, um, a work ethic integration, I think you would be able to succeed.
Thank you so much for that. Over to you, Eva.
I think for me, it's on your competency. From a regulatory affairs perspective, you are employed to, and any other technical career, you are employed for your technical competency. The trust in you that they put so much trust in you so that they can plan their campaigns, they can plan their launches. And when over time you build that trust, I think you rely a lot on your competency. So I believe that grow your competency. Of course, it will grow over time, right? It's not a one day I will do regulatory affairs and I will succeed. I've grown it over time, right? And I've grown it also because when I started out with 3 countries. Actually, it was Kenya only, then 3 countries, then 9 countries, then 15 countries, then now over 33 to 35 markets in Africa. And it was over time, right? And it's not that where I was working, I mean, GSK and Helion, it's not like, they had no other option. They trusted me, and I also told them to take a risk on me. I had very difficult calls and said, take a risk on me, please. I want to grow. I want to learn. I also just want to broaden my horizons. So take a risk on me. So I know what I'm doing here, and I may not speak French, but I know I'll be able to handle. So trust your competency and build your competency. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Eva. And as I come to you, Resi, there's a question that has come here. Did you feel supported, e.g., by close friends or family as you got big roles? How do you navigate not feeling supported when you go up the ranks?
Okay. So what I'll do, I'll add on what the rest of my colleagues have talked about. For me, what I've found that has worked very well for me is being the CEO of my career and having a board of directors that help in my career journey. And that means then from a board of director perspective, imagine yourself sitting that you're the head of the table and talking to people about how you want your career to progress. So yes, you are competent, but you need people to speak in spaces that you're not. You need people to call you out when you're doing something that they feel you should improve on. You need someone someone who's called you or someone tell you, this is what I've done. How do you also do it? How can you do it? And this is the way you can do it. So you need an advocate, you need a sponsor, you need a coach, you need a mentor. You need those people who are brave enough to tell you, honestly, Resi, that was really silly. Why did you say that? And they call you out, and without feeling embarrassed that they'll call you out, and you'll actually think through and probably decide you need to do something differently. So for me, that's one thing that has worked well for me. And as much as I'm talking about a board of directors, it's not that I have board meetings every month or 3 months. No, I have different meetings. Some of them don't even know each other, but I meet them separately. But in my own space, when people say when you have your own meeting in your head or when you're in your quiet place, you can actually have that meeting very well and say, this is the direction I want to take. Yes. Provided you are competent, as Eva mentioned, and also you're doing what you need to do, as Prof also mentioned. So you've talked about people who don't support you. My philosophy in life has always been that you'll know whether you'll grow in your career or not if you have a boss who doesn't support you, who doesn't have even bother to talk about career discussions. Because there are those bosses who are really good. They're really good. But when you go to career discussions, they run away so fast. So either because they're threatened, I've never wanted to know why. Yeah. So a lot of times always know that if you have a boss who, when it comes to career discussions, those discussions go nowhere, then know you're likely not to grow in that role. So it's good for you to take the initiative to see then what is your next role. What do you need to do to make sure then you get your next role, either within or out of the organization? So it's things then you need to look at and say, how do you work on that? From a support from a family perspective, for me, I've always been fortunate. I've always been supported, though there's at one point I know earlier on in my career, I had wanted to move jobs, and that job was going to pay me more than what my husband was paying. So one of the days when I was a bit happy, he told me, hi, my dear, that job, I discouraged you because you are going to get more than me. But along the way, after that, we laughed about it, and I thought, anyway, the job was not mine. It was not meant to be mine, and I let it go. But after that, the man has been supportive 100,000%. And I'm just lucky that I have a family that supports me, that whatever career discussions, career direction I want to take, they're always supportive. But also, having said that, we pray about those kind of things as a family to make sure that we are aligned in the direction we are going, because my career is not only for me, it's benefiting my family and many other people around me. So that's how I've managed the support and non-support.
Thank you so much for that. Anybody else with anything to add to that aspect on the support, especially close friends and family?
I think I've recently done a post on my official official Instagram and YouTube about friends and how it's also lonely at the top, if you don't know, because you also have a lot of projects that you can't talk about. And you need friends who ground you, as Racy has said, but you also need friends to go and decompress from, because you can't complain at work. Right? And we are human. So I think it's important to grow together. You also have to be a good friend to them. It's I say human beings have relationships, and relationship is a give and take. So also as for me, I've also been that person they can bounce off ideas from, and I make time for that. I make time for my friends, and I know they make time for me, and my family. So I think it's important, as you grow, you also grow. Don't leave them, because as I say, the office is not going to bury you. No. So you need people who, and I have friends from university. Until now, I meet them, I talk to them, I chat to them. I I know what they're going through. I know if they're applying for a new job. I know if they're negotiating for a salary. I know what to tell them. I know when they're doubting themselves, and they know that with me. And it's important to build that relationship. And I feel maybe that's the board that also Tracy was talking about, because it's important to have um friends. But also, as I've I've attended a lot of these leadership short courses, for women and other leadership. It also tells you to have a lawyer friend, because you're growing. To tell you to, you must know someone in HR in case you're discussing a contract, in case you're discussing something. So it's important to also know that, not I don't only have friends in pharmacy, but I also nurture friendships in different industries, so that anytime I need help, it's good to network. All right.
Fantastic,
Helped me.
fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. And I think it's clear for us, you need to acknowledge that you need those friendships, nurture them, nourish them, because it's a give and take. But at the same time, be clear on what you're looking for and have your board of advisors or whatever it is. They might not know each other, but there are people who will call you to account and actually ask you when you're doing things that are not making sense in your own journey. But in the whole scope of everything, one, build yourself. And as you're building yourself, own what you know, own your competence. And as you're doing that and owning your competence, get into spaces and get to do what you need to do. And most importantly, be clear that you have the right supportive structures, as Rexia said. Sometimes when you realize you're not in the right space, maybe plan your move out of that space so that you get into spaces where you'll be appreciated and you'll be valued for whatever it is that you deserve, that you need in your profession and your personal life as you walk that journey. As you're coming to the end of this, my colleague will help me bring on a screen so that we can have a survey in terms of feedback from the team. But I really appreciate so much Eva, Gracie, and Chital for coming on board and actually being with us and gracing us with your presence for the whole session. Really appreciate it. Yes, it's already on. So there's a questionnaire that we have, the survey that is on here. For those of you who are here, you can either scan the QR code or we can get the link in the chat right now. Oops, it's gone away, Juliet. There it is. The link is in the chat. Let's get your feedback on this. There are only 3 questions. And feel free to share any comments or any question that you might have. We'll be able to engage. And even if you have anything that you think probably you need somebody to talk about, we'll be more than glad to have a follow-up conversation with you on my end from here. Then we can see where the support can come from for you in whatever it is that you're looking at in relation to the conversation that we are having here. let's get our responses in, guys. It's our way of evaluating the key conversation that we're having, but also seeing the key things that we need to bring up in the subsequent engagements. As we do that, maybe a question that I would ask the three of you, first, Igiva and Shitao. When you look at the time that you joined the industry and where we are at the moment, how would you rate the level of progress that has been made in terms of gender mainstreaming?
In the pharmaceutical market industry, I would say it's much, much better than it was before, because previously when I started as a medical representative, I think majority of maybe over 80% of the medical reps were female and 20% were male. Then as they go up the roles, the females, it starts now skewing towards the men, to more of the men, and the ladies now start becoming fewer and fewer and fewer. But now you can see what I notice nowadays is roughly maybe 50-50 as you go up. Management roles can do better in terms of making sure from a gender diversity we are where we need to be. So definitely there's some big improvement. What I would just sometimes what I've observed so far is more of the work-life integration that most of the companies need to make sure then they do. And I would say as a medical rep, when I was a medical rep, the fact that I manage my own time, it would mean then I can rush home today to breastfeed my kid if I wanted to. I can do that. I had more liberty, and because of that, I did not want an office job, which tied me in the office, because the field there I can do what I need to do. But nowadays, because some of the workplaces are becoming a bit flexible, someone can comfortably even leave the office to go and breastfeed and come back. I'm talking about more childbearing women now, yeah? So I think things are improving. And as leaders, sometimes then is to also make sure then in the office spaces we have, can we make sure then we have rooms that also cater for the birth, the mothers who are in that stage of giving birth, have breastfeeding rooms, have rooms, those kind of rooms that actually cater for that, for those kind of mothers. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Any contribution on this, Eva? Any observations?
Yes, so I feel that we have evolved. I feel there is better representation, but we are not there yet, because the representation, as you've seen what Prof is saying, most students now are female, not most, but more than just a bit more than half. And then so you find that in senior level, VP level. So you find mid-level and entry level, you'll find women, but senior, really, really senior roles, we are not yet there, right? I'm happy that, of course, I work for a company where the gender policies are quite embedded, but I'm aware that this is a tenth of what my colleagues and other pharmacists are working with. Just as simple as maternity, you know. I was listening to someone and she said when she was planning to have a child, she actually planned to first get a job in a company that offers 6 months maternity, and she knew why. But most of us don't have that privilege. So I do understand that there are policies in companies. Kenyans, there's a change. There's a change, a mindset change that we need to do. Mainly, it should start from Parliament, because I feel that many companies follow the Kenyan employment laws, and if it says you must have maternity, then you must have maternity leave, and other policies thereof, especially the pay parity. I feel that if there are more senior leaders in that section, then pay parity becomes something that is worked on. especially if you have women senior leaders. So from an R&D perspective, I feel that, of course, there has been some improvement with the innovations, the products we are seeing available to us. Who knew we could take ashwagandha and magnesium to, to sleep or release stress? Who knew we could have supplements that would help us with perimenopause and menopause? So I'm not saying there has been none, but I feel in R&D they could do more with women innovation products. Of course, sponsorship I feel remains the topmost. As Prof has said, sponsorship with regard to just visibility and telling someone talking to about you on the table. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Any last comments, Chital?
Yes. Ideally, David, our constitution is very clear. 1/3 of any position should belong to women. I like Rwanda and Ghana. They have implemented that policy in terms of leadership, women in leadership. And we should encourage young women in leadership, which we are not. Look at our parliament. It's not. Look at my own, as much as USIU, we are advocating, all right? How many of our women professors who are in STEM are in those positions of vice chancellor, deputy vice chancellor? Very few as compared to universities out there in the US and in the UK. So I think we need to have that that policy actually implemented to the core. There are women who are quite competent and they're quite ethical as well. So with regard to that, my parting shot is women, we are there. Men, we are in a situation right now where we are looking at gender equity. All right, with all what's going around in the global scenario, when it comes to that, there is that element of ethics and development of trust between the genders. And I'm 110% sure if it is a woman in leadership position, that trust element and being ethical is key. You will get it out from that woman. You look at personal relationships, women are the ones that make it happen. As much as sometimes, or most times, they persevere as well. As Racy said, her husband did not want her to make more money than him. Those are egoisms that we need to now. I come from a generation X. It needs to go. Yeah. And our men, you are there for her. That is it. That's my parting shot. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure listening to you, challenging ourselves to think beyond where we are. And I think there's still work to be done, but it starts from a point of being intentional about the changes that we need to have and acknowledging that actually disparities still exist. There has been progress that has been made, which is commendable, but you have to do more. And doing more does not mean we skew the dynamics to against men, but rather looking at how do we have a balanced ecosystem where there's more of gender equity rather than gender disparities in the ecosystem. Thank you so much for the conversation, for the insight that you shared. We really appreciate. And for all of our participants, thank you for gracing us with your presence. We really enjoy, and I hope you've gotten value out of this. Thank you. Have a good one.